We're live. Good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular council meeting of City of Beaumont City Council, Tuesday, February 14th, 2023 at 6 o'clock. And we'll begin as you always do with land acknowledgement. And I'll read that now. We are pleased to be here today on traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether it be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. As we gather here in the traditional territory of Treaty 6, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people. We have ongoing responsibility to protect and honor all of life. Next on our agenda is the proclamation. I have one this evening. Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day, February 22nd, 2023. Whereas the Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day highlights Beaumont's commitment to a safe and inclusive community. And whereas acts of bullying, cyberbullying, harassment, intimidation, and violence have a profound effect on individuals' feelings of safety, self-worth, and ability to learn, and are unacceptable in a safe, caring, and orderly society. And whereas communities, workplaces, families, schools, individuals all have a critical role to play in modeling, teaching, and promoting socially responsible behavior. And whereas Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day is an opportunity to actively promote respectful and kind behavior and to celebrate the action of individuals, schools, and groups to address bullying. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim February 22nd, 2023 as Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day in the City of Beaumont, dated the 4th of February, 2023. And please note that in honor of Bullying Awareness Proclamation, Council will be wearing pink at their next committee of the whole meeting on February 21st of 2023. So Renee, you got a pink ball cap? It's a good day to wear it. So that's on next coming Tuesday, committee of the whole on February 21st, 2023. With that, move on with our agenda. Ms. Bujaya, any changes to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no changes to the agenda, and I'm just trying to pull up the motion.
Thank you. Member of Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as presented? Councilor Newkirk. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Is this the point where we would remove things from the consent agenda?
No, that's coming up next.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll move the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Next on our agenda is a consent agenda. Would you please put the consent agenda up on the screen, please? I'm assuming Councilor Newkirk, you mentioned having this on next to the topic, so I'll let you go first if you would mind, Steve. You have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Would be my intent tonight to approve the consent agenda, but removing items 6C and 10B.
6C and 10B. Okay. Discussion on the motion. Hang on one second, Steve. Once it clears off the screen, I'll have you make the motion to
You bet.
move the adjusted consent agenda, please, when it's ready.
Yeah, I'll move that the consent agenda approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting, January 24th, 2023 minutes. 6B, elected officials remuneration policy benefit program options. 6D, request for appointment to Black Gold School Division, École Coloniale Estates School, name change committee. And 6E, automated traffic enforcement vehicle visibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion, Council. See no one wishing to speak. I'll ask you to vote on the amended consent agenda, please. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda is the open forum. Ms. Bujaya, anybody on open forum this evening?
Mr. Mayor, no, we've not received any registrations.
Thank you. Moving on with our agenda, we go down now into item 6A, pilot program for allowing consumption of alcohol in the city park picnic spaces. Ms. Bujaya, will you be speaking to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my pleasure to bring this report to council. So I'm Sandy Bujaya, the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and working alongside a number of other directors in our organization. I'm very happy to bring this report to council and the public. As council will recall, as part of the review of the community standards bylaw last year, council had asked administration to prepare a report on options for establishing a pilot program to allow for the consumption of alcohol in city park spaces. There have been similar pilot programs in neighboring municipalities, most notably in the city of Edmonton and in Strathcona County, and administration was able to look at the experiences there in order to prepare this report. I want to acknowledge that a number of city departments were engaged in preparing this report. So we had protective services, recreation, infrastructure, communications, and community and social development all provide input. Some of the key considerations that were looked at in preparing the report were things like ensuring compliance with provincial statutes and requirements, ensuring public safety, selecting the most appropriate location for the pilot, mitigating nuisances such as excessive noise or garbage, public perception, and the impact to municipal resources overall. So things like enforcement, public engagement, signage, education, etc. The potential pilot that's described in the report was an idea that arose from the work related to the community standards bylaw. So administration had not conducted significant public engagement on this concept prior to now. That said, there was a survey question related to this topic when we did the public survey on the community standard bylaw. That question read as follows. Some municipalities in Alberta are loosening rules for drinking in public and allowing the consumption of alcohol in designated spaces, such as parks and within certain hours. Beaumont is not considering allowing public alcohol consumption at this time, and changes would involve consultation with the public about locations, hours, and other factors. To what extent do you agree Beaumont should consider allowing limited public alcohol consumption, such as in parks and outdoor sports? So just to be clear, that was a question we had in the survey that went out with the community standards bylaw draft. Out of the 200 responses received, 57% said that they strongly agreed or somewhat agreed with the statement, so sort of in favor, while 30% somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed. The remainder either said that they neither agreed nor disagreed or that they were uncertain. Again, this was only one question in the survey, so it's difficult to draw concrete conclusions regarding public sentiment on the pilot program. If the city were to pursue a pilot program, administration would recommend conducting more targeted public engagement before launching the program. In terms of what the pilot would actually look like, administration recommends a fairly modest pilot with the following parameters. So the pilot could run between June 2023 and October 2023. It would be limited to designated picnic sites at Four Seasons Park, except for those sites which are close to the spray park. The hours would be between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. 7 days a week. And upon the conclusion of the pilot program, we would conduct some further public engagement regarding the program and provide a follow-up report to council by the end of Q1 2024. That report would help council make a decision about any future changes to our parks programming. If council supports the pilot program as it is presented and would like to proceed with launching the program, then the recommendations in the report could be moved and voted upon tonight. Administration would then proceed with the public engagement activities and report back to council on the results of the engagement in May of 2023. We would also take the necessary steps to get all the signage required and ensure that we had legal compliance and address any sort of other preparatory issues. Not moving forward with the pilot program at this time would not preclude council from revisiting the idea in the future. So this is not a now or never situation. The intention was just to bring an example of what it could look like and what public engagement administration would recommend if council wished to proceed. At this point, I'm happy to stop and allow time for council questions or comments and turn things over back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Bajay. I appreciate that. Appreciate the report. At this point, I'll open up to questions from council, and seeing Councilor Swain, I believe this was your idea to bring forward at a future time, which is now today. So would you please begin to speak to the report if you'd care to? There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the report and doing all the work here. Mostly, I agree with everything you've got in here. Just a couple of questions. First one is just around timing. So you've got a recommendation here that a public hearing or non-statutory public hearing occur on the 11th of April. Can you just line up, just help me understand when the public engagement would fit into that process? Are we looking to do that before that public hearing or after? Because I see that the report's coming back by the end of May. I just, I'd like folks to have a chance to go through the public engagement and then be able to participate in the public hearing. So can you just explain that a bit, please?
Thank you, Councillor Munkoff-Swain, through the mayor to you. Thank you for that question. I should have clarified that when I was presenting. The idea would be that we would start public engagement in March. We wanted to have a couple of open houses and more targeted survey, a few different public engagement activities. The non-statutory public hearing, I think that's a great opportunity to hear from the public, but that would be the last piece. Yep. So it'd allow us some time to get information out, conduct some of the other public engagement activities, and that would be the final public engagement activity prior to reporting back to council. The timing is arranged so that if we wanted to move forward with this pilot this summer in the timeframe noted in the report, we would be able to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate the answer and the logical thinking around the timing. The only other piece that I had here, Mr. Mayor, was just around limiting the program to designated picnic sites. So I assume what you mean by those are tables. Yeah, so the challenge with that is people want to bring a blanket down, all that sort of stuff, right? So I'd be curious if there is a way, and I'll leave it to Mr. Bierzowski to figure out the magic, but a way to ask a question around limiting it to picnic sites or opening it up to certain areas. Acknowledge the point here that we don't want it right by the spray park. I agree with that. But there's a lot of open space there, and just if the 3 picnic tables are full, I'd still like to be able to bring a bottle of wine down and have a drink with dinner. So just a question to consider as we're going through the engagement. I don't need to adjust anything here. It makes sense to me here, and I'm good with these recommendations and wait to see what comes back with the public engagement. So I won't move any recommendations yet. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Miller. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the report. My question also was around what was considered a picnic site. So Councillor Munkoff-Swain clarified that. For information purposes, why were the times of 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. chosen?
Thank you, Councillor McCook, for the question through the mayor to you. In my discussions with Recreation, we sort of looked at when the parks are being operated, and we wanted to have consistent times throughout the entire week, just to make it easier for enforcement and easier for people to know when it's allowed and when it's not allowed. And we just felt that kind of covered lunchtime activities and dinner activities and not going too late into the evening to avoid some of the potential nuisances with late night parties and things of that nature. So that was the rationale behind that. A couple of you have raised the idea of the picnic site, and I think that would require a little more digging into. And when you look at the Liquor and Gaming Act, it's very specific about picnic sites. So I would want to check the definition just to see how elastic that definition is, but that's something we can absolutely look into.
Perfect, thank you. Do we feel that we have sufficient resources, i.e. bylaw and everything, to run this pilot? Listed in the financial implications piece, it states that any required adjustments could be made in subsequent operating budget requests. Just so I'm clear, would that be for the pilot, or is that just if we decide to move ahead and keep it as a regular thing?
We had a lot of discussions about that. We feel that the pilot could be absorbed within our regular operating budget. the comment in the financial implications is if we were to expand and make this a regular part of programming, that would be something we need to consider. It's a little bit of uncharted territory, so it's sometimes hard to know what the full financial impact is, but because the scope is really being managed here, we're not, there's not a high level of concern. We think this is reasonable, and we will have more data from which to sort of speculate what the cost would be to expand after the pilot.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And sorry, just one more, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Based on that, will we be collecting much data or anything like that to have some of those numbers moving forward as much as we can, or?
Thank you. Yes, the intention is to use the pilot as a bit of a testing ground, and we are making a commitment to report back to council. So in order to provide an effective report, we would want to bring some data back to council, and then we could help council make a better decision about how they want to proceed, if at all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. Councillor McCook kind of mentioned one of the questions that I had, and it was just around the bylaw, protective services. Is this going to, we're doing public engagement again. I guess I'd be interested to see what their thoughts are on this. And, you know, sounds like a good kind of idea, but I'm just not sure what it would look like. I'm just looking at Strathcona County, and they have it clearly labeled for designated areas. So I think it sounds nice to go have, like, you know, a bottle of wine with dinner and stuff, but, you know, we have to be careful. All of a sudden you start saying we're able to drink in public, and it turns into I just worry about the spiral and how that's communicated, and kind of a bunch of things running through my head right now. But that was one thing, is, are we going to engage our protective services for their feedback, or anybody else that it will affect?
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Through the mayor to you. We did engage with protective services, recreation, infrastructure, community social development in preparing the report. I don't want to speak for our Director of Protective Services. I'm not sure if you want to comment, Jay.
Mr. Melvin.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller. One of the big things right now is we don't know call volume of concerns or complaints that we would have. It's once again a bit of an unknown. It's one of those, unfortunately, bridges we'll have to cross to determine if doing this means X or so many hours or correlates to some type of FTE requirement to manage this type of program. But right now there's no data to say where we are, because this is a pilot. So our best I guess guess right now is that we'll run the pilot, we'll see what the data supports. If for some reason things get right out of control, then obviously we would be bringing back a recommendation to either kind of modify the pilot program or other things, but that'll be in discussion with administration. But everything will be in consult, not only with our community peace officer, but also with the RCMP on statistics for call volumes or calls for service for that area towards complaints. So.
Awesome, thanks. That's all I have for questions.
You good, Ashley?
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you for the report. I think it's very, very helpful to have this laid out this way. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly that there will be an opportunity after the public consultation to make a decision on whether to proceed or not. That by accepting this report, that doesn't imply that we're definitely going ahead.
Ms. Vijaya.
Thank you. So this report would be giving us direction to proceed with the pilot, to undertake the public engagement, but I think we have to remain open to reversing course. If council undertakes the public engagement and there's strong sentiment opposing the pilot, of course, council can then make the decision not to proceed with the pilot or to postpone it or any other action that seems appropriate to council. The only caveat is some of the preparatory work we would undertake now, like for signage, because That takes some time, but none of that is high cost. So we're not talking about thousands of dollars. We're talking about investing some signs, doing some public engagement. So we are spending some money, but this is not irreversible. So council will always have the ability to say, no, we're going to change the pilot. We're going to postpone the pilot. We're going to abandon the pilot, pending the outcome of that public engagement.
Thank you. Now, and I'm just going to make sure I'm hearing it correctly, that would be an opportunity presented to us when the report comes back on the public consultation.
Absolutely. It'll be, because it'll be on the council agenda. It is fair game. So council can make
Right.
any motion.
I just don't
It
want it to
deems
miss
fit.
us, like it goes by, we forgot, so that's not going to just go by, I don't think so. Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Is the Lions Park campground permitted use for alcohol right now? I know it's like attached to Four Seasons and people are obviously camping there, but just so we're clear, is that going to be excluded from the pilot or is that already an area that we can consume alcohol?
It's not currently a location where alcohol can be consumed. It is not contemplated as part of the pilot. We're looking at the picnic sites that are at the tables around the body of water. So it is pretty limited. We collectively, when we looked at this, we tried to make a decision on a modest pilot to sort of run exactly as a bit of a test, gather data, gather feedback, and then any subsequent decisions about expanding the program can be made at that point.
Perfect. Yeah,
That
thank
was
you.
the intention.
Yeah, no, makes sense and kind of keep it to one area so we can get some good feedback and data. Yeah, probably be a decent idea to have some recycle bins out there, obviously part of it. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions from council before I go to the motion stage? So before I go to Councillor McGough-Swain, who I believe will make the motion this evening, Ms. Bujaya, can Councillor McGough-Swain move all three at once if he chooses
Absolutely.
to, or individually?
Up all three at once if council wishes.
That's my understanding. So Councillor McGough-Swain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move that administration proceed with the pilot program for the consumption of alcohol in city park spaces and the public engagement activities as set out in the February 14, 2023 report. Pilot program for allowing the consumption of alcohol in city park spaces, and that a non-statutory public hearing in accordance with the procedures set out in the meetings procedures bylaw be held as part of the April 11th, 2023 council meeting, and that by the end of May 2023, administration prepare a report on the results of the public engagement activities for council's consideration.
Thank you, Councillor.
Briefly speak to it.
Yes,
That's okay.
so speak to your motion, and then we'll ask for questions on the motion.
Yeah,
Please proceed.
I just wanted to acknowledge the good points that have been made around, if this gets out of hand, right? Like to me, I view this as if we can all be adults here and people are going to enjoy it, then, but if it starts to get out of hand, then we just shut it down. So I've seen it work in Europe, recently saw it work and took advantage of it in New Zealand. And so you'd hope that people would behave, but certainly if we're getting complaints and it's causing Jay and team, a nightmare, then, then we would look to shut it down. So hopefully we can all be adults about it and enjoy it. So appreciate the support on this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further councillors wishing to discuss the motion before I call for the vote? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion before you? It carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, administration, for that report. Moving on our agenda, we now move down to 6C, taking off the consent agenda, review the council policy number 1, public participation policy. Mr. Berezowski, I believe you'll be speaking to this evening.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Daniluk and council. For the benefit of our guests, as well as those watching remotely, I am Mike Berezowski. I'm the Director of Communications for the City of Beaumont. Just to briefly talk about the report that we have before us tonight, the public participation policy must be revisited in the year following general municipal election. It was last approved by council in 2020. So the review was done last year. These are the results of that. There are some
what I would term as mostly housekeeping changes that are being proposed tonight to council to the policy. Briefly, the purpose of the policy is to state that the city does public engagement on major decisions, how that takes place, and the roles and responsibilities for that. So with that, I'll hand it over to council happily for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beresowski. Appreciate that. Councillor Newkirk, I'm assuming you may have some questions or thoughts. I'll ask you to speak first if you'd like to. Yeah, floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of considerations that I thought I would bring forward tonight, and got a motion prepared as well. But regarding section 3, the scope and application, there's a section there on the roles and responsibilities. And we talk about the roles and responsibilities for municipal stakeholders, for council, and then for administration. But I think it would be a good thing to do to contemplate the role of the public as well, because it's a public participation policy. So I think it would be helpful to, put a paragraph or section in there that says the public, and, here's the roles and responsibilities of the public, right? So that was my first thought. The second thought, also for consideration, both these are for consideration and, response back if administration feels otherwise. But the public participation approaches the box there very closely mirrors the IAP2 spectrum of public participation, but it doesn't exactly match that. I don't know if the intent was to match that or not, but I know in a couple of our plans we do refer and use, and I have seen that pop up in our presentations, and it kind of evades me right now, but I believe there maybe the rec master plan and maybe the MDP, something like that. I definitely know that spectrum has been in front of us and discussed as part of some of our master plans. So the consideration I asked for is just for continuity and consistency between documents, and that's why I bring it up. So administration can comment that on if you like, or
Certainly, through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, thank you. And there's some excellent questions and comments regarding the responsibilities of the public. I do recall a similar amendment to the proposed council strategic plan. I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I would put a question back to you if you can elaborate a little bit more on what you had in mind for that. But I do think that is probably a reasonable and responsible thing to put into the policy. Just to clarify that the public does have a role, or can have a role, of course, at their choice in this process. To your second point about the IAP2 spectrum, I think that when this was developed, there was an intent to make it a little more clear to the public as well as to laypersons, I guess, for lack of a better word, within the administration, for our own staff, to provide some more clarity and to provide a little more municipal context. So, for example, you'll see words like council and administration in the spectrum. To draw a specific example, there's in the IAP2 spectrum itself, their wording they use involve and collaborate. I think we chose some different wording to provide some more clarity on distinction between the two things. So that was the intent on why the verbiage was adapted somewhat for the policy. In terms of other documents, I really wouldn't be in a position to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe the motion that I'll put forward, the verbiage is in there for consideration, right? Like it's definitely not, it's not direction. It's, for consideration on those 2 points. I think I'll probably leave the wording as it is. And to address the public roles and responsibilities, I think that there's probably, as you alluded to, there's probably some verbiage that we can migrate from, another amendment into this and adapt it. But the intent is it's a public participation policy, and the public has a role to participate if they choose, right? And that's the point, right? It isn't a public participation policy that only municipal stakeholders, council, and administration partake in, right? So we do want and need feedback and people to provide their feedback. So if you Ledge Services wouldn't mind throwing up the motion, please. Thank you. Oh, sure.
Mic is off myself. Sorry, so we will go to council first for any further questions or comments before we go to Councillor Van Newkirk's motion. Are there any questions from other councillors before we move forward with Steve's motion? No problem. Steve? Back to you. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I would move that revised council policy number 1, public participation policy, be referred to administration for further work as follows. Consider adding details to the policy regarding the role and responsibility of the public in terms of the city's public engagement activities, and consider the language used to describe the spectrum of public participation modes and alignment with the most current language employed by the International Association for Public Participation, IAP2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you care to speak to your motion in any more detail than you already had previously? You're good. Questions from councillors? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. By passing this motion, then do we send it back to the administration and then it's not approved tonight? It has to come back again?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that
that
question,
the
but Ms.
intent?
Bujaya, would you mind speaking to that, or Mr. Berzowski? Ms. Bujaya? Oh, hang on. Your mic's on now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, when something is referred back to administration for further work, administration will take the direction, do the work, and then bring it back to a subsequent council meeting.
Okay, can I answer your question, Councillor? Thank you. I see Councillor Markov Swain. Sam, you wish to speak? Go ahead, please.
Just very briefly, I'm just a bit confused by the word consider, like either we're asking administration to do it or not. So I'm supportive of what you're trying to do here, but we're asking them to do something, but then consider it. So then if they come back, like if you want it in there, then let's just ask them to do it. Or I just, do you know what I mean?
Steve, do you wish to respond to that or make any adjustments?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, I think Councillor Mokaswe makes a good point. I think on the first bullet point, let's amend it to remove the word consider and say add details. The first one is something I would like to include. The second bullet point is something I'd like them to consider. So I think that adds clarity. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, no, like that's great.
Yeah, I think Sam read my mind on that one. That was good. Appreciate that, Steve. Any further questions from council on the motion? Just to be clear, administration, do you have a clear understanding of what Steve's intent is with the motion? While you have a chance to ask any questions, Mike, you're good? Okay, perfect. See no further discussion on the motion. Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Councilor Van Newkirk, on doing that. I believe now, Ms. Bujaya, that takes care of this report. We're gonna have to report, let's get the balanced report for anything new because we move on to the next item. That's what I thought. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, after 2 consent items, is councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. We have had 2 councillor inquiries responded to in the agenda package as presented to council and the public in general. Are there any councillor inquiries this evening? I have one myself, but I'll yield the floor to any councillor of the councillor inquiry before I put my own on the screen. Seeing none right now. Ms. Bujay, if you could, please. My inquiry will be, please provide an update on the progress on work related to the motion from July 26, 2022 to approve funding in the amount of $75,000 from the Traffic Safety Reserve for the purpose of completing pedestrian safety enhancements, and please provide the balance of the Traffic Safety Reserve. Thank you, Ms. Bujaya. Are there any further councillor inquiries, responsive reports this evening? Seeing none, we'll continue on our agenda. And that is down to the CAO update. I know Mr. Shorts was taken away today. No, sorry, not taken away. He had to leave the office today unexpectedly. I said that the wrong way. I knew what I meant, but it came out the wrong way. So Ms. O'Neill, you'll be substituting for Mike this evening.
Good evening, Council. I'm pleased to provide a few brief updates for you in CAO Schwartz's absence. I'll start with the Satellite Food Bank and Thrift Store. Unfortunately, flooding in the newly leased space, coupled with some staffing constraints, has caused a delay for the opening. However, the board and volunteers are so close to finishing the setup now, and the board will soon be finalizing the opening dates. The board has committed to include proper notification of the grand opening ahead of time for mayor and council, as well as formal invitations for you. More info to follow as it becomes available. Another update from our community and social development team. Tomorrow, February 15th, residents are invited to participate in a Belonging in Beaumont fireside chat from 3 to 6 p.m. at the library. This session will provide residents with information regarding the equity, diversity, and inclusion framework, as well as allow participants a chance to provide feedback on their community. All residents are invited to attend. And you see it up there, okay. From our corporate analytics and technology team, as presented in December 2022, administration is providing progress updates on the activities outlined in our new digital master plan. In addition, social media campaigns prompt residents to review the updates when they are live on the dmp.beaumont.ab.ca website. Director Melvin is smiling because Beaumont Fire Service is one step closer to receiving their new aerial apparatus. It has arrived in Red Deer. It's ready for the next round of inspections, factory training, and branding. Everything is on schedule for end of March in service date.
Okay.
From our Parks and Roads team, this fantastic weather has allowed us to have residential snow removal completed ahead of schedule, and snow removal in the back alleys are ongoing. However, that same warm weather has us spending more time clearing catch basins across the city to manage the melt and drainage. This warm weather also makes maintaining safe ice conditions for our outdoor rinks challenging. So please continue to check our website to see which rinks are currently closed due to warm conditions. I believe there's 2 of them. And then my last 2 updates are from our recreation team. Beaumont continues its tradition of the Family Day celebration. It comes back on February 20th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the community center. If you go to our website, all the details of the schedule are posted there. And finally, I'm passing on a message from Delta Valley Landscaping, who is proud to share that one of their projects, Beaumont's Four Seasons multi-use sports field, received the 2022 Landscape Alberta Award for Excellence and Merit in the category of commercial landscape construction over 500,000. They wish to thank the city of Beaumont and our consultant Select Engineering for placing their trust in Delta Valley to complete the projects. That's it. Thank you.
That's great. The award, that's awesome. We have a lot of good comments on the artificial turf field and the ball diamonds. A lot of good comments. So I guess it's being recognized in their capacity in the industry, which is awesome. So are there any questions for Ms. O'Neill for our CEO update? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, just a thank you. I really appreciate these updates, and I really, really appreciate that they're put in writing in front of me because I can keep up with you when you're talking. So thank you very much for that. And I do appreciate all the work that's happening too. Thank you. I know, but it's so much nicer when I can see it right here for me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And in addition to that, what I've noticed in the last few episodes or versions of the paper, the La Nouvelle, they've been including the CAO update as, paragraphs of information for the public. So I think we've just stepped up the game a lot in that, and it's helping to inform the community further. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And with that too, I'll just make a quick comment. There was a gentleman on social media today on Beaumont Talks who braved social media to praise administration, Cora Lee in our planning department. Mr. Johannes Wong, you can pass on to Kendra to Cora Lee. He mentioned her specifically in his post, saying she did a great job, knew her stuff, and hats off to city administration. So I will send him a personal note of thank you for braving social media and saying something positive about administration, because we do a lot of good work that sometimes doesn't get recognized. So I will just thank that gentleman myself in person when I get the opportunity to do so. Seeing no further questions for the CEO update. Thank you, Council. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion to come from a member of council this evening? I'm not aware of any, but Councilor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My notice of motion is that by the end of the second quarter of 2020, at the February 28th meeting, I will move that by the end of the second quarter of 2023, administration prepare a report on what research and partnerships, if any, exist regarding tactical urbanism and that the report include an overview of which, if any, City of Beaumont policies support tactical urbanism, past efforts, and options for further promoting tactical urbanism in the City of Beaumont.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further doses of the motion to be brought forth this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on in our agenda. Brings us to our closed session. So with that, I will ask for a motion from council to move into closed session, at which time we will close our doors. Members of the public will need to leave the room. Do appreciate your attending. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So with that, is there a member of council willing to move into closed session? Councillor Miller, Ashley?
Sure, I move that we move into closed session at 6:40.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote to move in camera. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. We will wait one moment. We have a chance to shut down the live feed and have our door closed.